Hello, my name is Dr. Alea Fairchild. A lot of you know me from campus teaching research methods courses. I've had a very wide and interesting life, doing a lot of different things. And this last pandemic year, with a lot of other people, I've been reflecting as to where I'm going and what path I would actually take to get there. This last period has had people very introspective as to looking at their future based partly on their past and partly on where they think they should be going at this point in time. Now, your journey of personal discovery is involved in making paths and finding your way through what seems to be at the moment an uncertain area. We're going to talk about wayfinding and pathmaking this particular discussion, and we're going to talk about finding your feet and how you should move forward right now. We had a lot of things canceled on us this last year, and all the plans people had made for vacations and particular events seem to have evaporated. But as we start to come out the other side, how are we going to make this journey work? When we start to approach these sorts of changes with curiosity, then innovation and discovery and learning come out of this and becomes a very valued activity. So my talk today about finding your feet is really looking about wayfinding and pathmaking techniques. So wayfinding is, in essence, how do you navigate between and amongst people and objects without necessarily a straight direction in mind. And in making a path, we're looking specifically at building the ground in front of you, perhaps even walking in the path that other people have walked on, and trying to make your own way, especially when the destination is actually unknown. And on that way, you see things like broken twigs and branches and big logs, which actually help shape and change your direction. And the universe helps you along the way, nudging you by putting some of these objects in your way. We'll discuss a bit more about that later. I'd like you to picture yourself in front of a big forest. And before you start to head towards that big forest, I'd like you to also take a step back and say, where did I come from? As in Dante's Inferno, in Canto 1, Dante finds himself in a large forest, heading his way in. Now, at this point, Dante is 35 years old, so halfway through a lifespan of what was back then about 70 years. And he had come from someplace else, but then he was going to a particular unknown environment. And he had to sense and make his way into that environment to perhaps face the unexpected, or at least try to address the unexpected. Using your skills of pathfinding and waymaking, how do you enter that forest? Where do you start? What points of reference are you using? Are you using some form of triangulation? Are you looking at the trees or the mountains nearby or where the sun is? In essence, what past experiences or what past information is helping you make that decision where to enter? It's not just where you've come from, because that gives you life experience, but also the things around you that allow you to orient yourself. Where you're going and where you think you are going plays a lot of important aspects in your journey making. What you think you're going to be. If you're going to be a banker or a lawyer, you think, I should be going into finance, I should be going to law school. With no map and relying purely on instinct, how do you voluntarily maneuver and make your way, not knowing what that end goal is actually going to be? So the wayfinding techniques we're looking at is a threefold concept. I am actually looking for patterns, what patterns exist. I'm making sense of those patterns, and then I'm nudging myself along the way as I go to see how those patterns create an outcome for me. So how do I take direction, reorient myself to see where I actually want to be going? So really, as I am making my way, there are four things I want to be doing. I want to start by orienteering myself. Where am I in direction to the forest? Where am I in direction to the sun? Where am I going in terms of entry? What is my entry point? Once I get started, I'm trying to make some decisions about the route. Do I face west? Do I continue along the side? what makes the most logical sense, again, based on the patterns I'm seeing. As I'm making my way, as I am maneuvering, I want to do some root decision making. Is this working for me, yes or no? At what point do I decide this is not working for me? And as I continue, how am I heading towards my final destination? Or as I used to say in the cars again, are we there yet? How far have I gotten in my progress to my destination? Is there a dashboard? Is there some sort of mechanism that allows me to see how much further I have left to go? Where am I going? Are we there yet? Kevin Lynch used the term wayfinding in his 1960s book, Image of the City, where he defined wayfinding to be a consistent use and organization of definitive sensory cues from the external environment. So we can see how, for example, in the pandemic, when people have had to put digital signage in to get people to flow in different directions, the use of visual cues from the physical space allow you to find ways in making your direction. Wayfinding involves thought. It also involves people. People are involved in your exercise, in moving yourself forward. And these movements take place in social environments. And those social environments are around and through past other people and using those other people to help navigate yourself. Now, we take routes for a variety of reasons. You might take the leisurely route because you want to see scenery. You might want to take a more direct or rapid route if you're looking for quick acceleration and you want to get there quickly, perhaps in whatever state you get there. Wayfinding is a very complex practice, and to do so, it involves some challenges people have problems with, like people asking for directions, asking, where am I, or do I turn left here? And also crowd following. Where are other people going? Is that the correct direction? And this is basically a combination of psychological and social cultural processes. So we know what waymaking is. What is pathfinding? Pathfinding is looking at pattern analysis and critical thinking to make sense of the pattern displayed in front of you. Now, this is something we actively teach you, critical thinking, reflective activities to understand pattern making. So there's three aspects here. Making sense of a pattern, so pattern recognition, what is being put in front of me. Making sense of that pattern, interpreting that information, that data, taking it on board to make adjustments and minor decisions, and then nudging, going forward with that information along the journey, along the destination, towards a particular endpoint. Now, let's look at all three of these. Pattern making, I need to understand what the pattern means, but also, have I seen that pattern before, yes or no? How does that fit into my experiences? But also, how does that fit with the people around me? When I reflect on that pattern? When I'm making sense of it, how am I interpreting it? Am I interpreting it correctly? And then, what am I doing with that information? Now, I mentioned before you're entering a forest, and you didn't start in the forest, you started from somewhere else. What I want you to think about is the skill of managing your entry conditions. What am I entering with? Do I have a map? Do I have a route book? Do I have a backpack? Do I have the right resources and the right skills to go where I want to go? If I need a guide or an orientation book or sort of resources to take with me, have I got them on board, yes or no? There's a lot of risks to consider in this. You might consider, can I offset some of these risks by acquiring certain pieces of information in advance? Staying with our forest analogy, suppose you're now outside the forest about to make your way in. You've looked at the pattern, you've assessed where you enter. What tells me this is the right place? What reference points am I actually using? And what combinations of those reference points actually make sense? And is this something I've learned? I know it's part of my instinct. What is telling me to enter that particular direction? How much do I trust myself in terms of the information provided? So perhaps these patterns I'm seeing are evidence that other people have gone there before. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? If you look at the Hindu religion, they believe that people have different stages in their spiritual journey, and not every way of worshiping works the same for everyone. And in social comparison theory, we see that comparing our journey to other people's journeys is not always a good way of searching for patterns. So if you believe that your Facebook feed, your Instagram feed, the TikTok videos are showing you what everybody else is doing with their lives, perhaps those decisions you're basing on those pieces of information are not correct. So hashtag living your best life perhaps is not the case in terms of decision making. Okay, you've made your decision, and now you're entering the forest. How do I know to keep going the way I'm going? And that's the whole concept of nudging. So what I'm doing when I'm nudging is I'm stopping and I'm feeling the ground beneath my feet. Is it firm? Is it soft? Is it muddy? Do I keep going this way? Do I shift slightly to the left? The ground is giving you feedback as to what you should be doing at this point in time. What does your intuition tell you? What risks am I taking if I keep going this way? If I stop a little bit on the ground to make sure it's firm, is that giving me the necessary feedback to take the next step, yes or no? So I continue forward and I learn as I go. And as I take on more and more information, I have more resources available to me that I can sense and nudge my way as to what the next steps are that I should actually take. But alas, sometimes nature has a way of nudging for you. And what you end up with are things like broken twigs, where you can actually see directional clues from the universe as to what it is you're supposed to be doing. You have the broken twigs, you have leaves, you have branches that are going in a certain direction. You can see where other travelers have been. You can actually learn from them. The universe is constantly giving you these clues. Now, my sister calls them postcards from life. You don't have to open them. They're there. They're visible. But you have to be able to read them and notice what they say and take the information on board. Even if you don't agree with it, you actually have to understand what's being said. Now, sometimes you're not listening. And when you're not listening, life offers you a log. The log makes you change direction. Back up, go around, go sideways, sometimes even go over. But that log is there because you missed the broken twigs, you missed the branches, you missed the signals as you were going along, and the log basically makes you stop and change direction and refine your perspective as to where it is you actually want to be going. So why am I telling you this story? I am in the process of making my way, like you're in the process of making yours. I am trying to find my way. I'm making my path. I'm looking at the path that other people have gone before me. And I'm taking in the fact that in your lifetime, you're going to have at least 6 different careers. And some of those careers are perhaps not overlapping, like parent or carer or spouse. So from that perspective, you start to shape and shift what I have done and what I want to be doing. Now, I've been doing a lot of very interesting things. I started my career majoring in astrophysics, switched from laser physics to business, went in and did a lot of interesting things in market research with technology, was a technology analyst and an influencer. And at one point, I took that information and I built something called a doctoral thesis. And with that doctoral thesis and my experimental resources of what I was doing in technology, I became a professor. So I went into the whole professor mode, Alea 2.0, and I created a whole academic career around that with consulting and papers and associate editor of a journal, having a career in terms of both teaching and research. And that also wound its way in terms of a certain path. In the last couple of years, the last 5 years to be specific, education has changed significantly. And I've been doing more educational development within my courses and looking at patterns of how people learn and building some of those skill sets as well. And now here we are in the pandemic period where we've been teaching and learning in different ways. And I have been threading all these things together, trying to create something called Alea 3.0. So what is the next step, the next logical sets of steps for me in my I hate to say career path because I've had a career path in my lifetime journey at this moment in time. So I am more than the sum of my LinkedIn profile. I am more than my digital narrative. And for the last 3 months, I've been doing something very interesting with a colleague of mine where I've been working on something called the 12-week year, where I have built, in essence, a year's plan, and I have short-circuited it to 3 months. So in every week was equivalent of a month, and trying to become more efficient in terms of my personal goals, my metrics, and what I'm actually trying to achieve. Setting up what my priorities are, looking at the balance of my life, trying to figure out where to apply my talents, and where to draw the line on things I do not want to do at this point in time. So this is sort of like almost like a sprint activity where you condense your activities into 3 months versus 1 year. The interesting outcome from this is I've made a lot of traction in things I've wanted to be doing, but I've either put aside or focused on things differently. This has created a sense of balance in a year that for many of us has been a very unbalanced and uncertain kind of year. So as I've mentioned, I'm now making smaller adjustments on a more regular basis. I'm counting up the small wins and what I'm actually trying to create with those small wins, working towards a really good version of Alea 3.0. And Alea 3.0 is going to be good. So I want you to bear certain things in mind. In complex environments, especially right now when almost everything is uncertain, we can't understand and predict the results of what's going to occur. This whole work your plan activity of project-based orientation doesn't work in this sort of situation. This is a period of time where what you have to do to find your way and make your path are small incremental steps, small wins, adding up to a larger set of gains. And those larger set of gains help you shift and shape your path by making sense of what is happening, how to address it, and what kind of outcomes you're getting. So in summary, making personal changes right now, when you're making your path and finding your feet, requires small shifts and incremental steps, not ginormous proportions, not seismic shifts, but little, steady, constant approaches to making gains that allows you to get those incremental improvements over time. Thanks for listening.